The HR Stories podcast is brought to you by the team at HR Stories. The team at HR Stories helps businesses, nonprofits better manage the employee experience, providing the tools, training, and resources they need to take their organization into the next level. To learn more, go to our website at theteam@hrstories.com. Each week on the HR Stories podcast, management and HR consultants Chuck Samikian and John Tallheimer dive into the stories that matter to small business owners, nonprofit leaders, and HR professionals. We continue to be amazed at how many companies allow poor decision-making, lack of knowledge, and in some cases, hubris to cause harm to their organization. Each week, we discuss stories where companies must pay large fines, lose great talent, or even stain their reputation within their communities. And we tell you how to avoid that same fate. Welcome to the HR Stories podcast, where there is a lesson in every story. In this week's episode, John and Chuck talk about sexual harassment in the workplace and what's happening at the EEOC. How you doing, Chuck? Oh man, you sound great, but I can't hear you. So let's get back there. Let's get a little audio going, folks. Look, Chuck's had a late night last night. He was out at his friend's house talking about HR. They have a little HR community down there. He goes out to every Thursday night, and so he was out there.
Yes, it's called HR over a BEER.
Oh.
Yeah,
HR
beer conversations. I don't know. Hey, folks, listeners, hello, welcome. Chuck here. I have my microphone turned on. John, as always, I'm excited to be here today. Excited to talk about HR. Like I say, I love HR, so you, not you, John, you as listeners maybe don't have to love it. You just have to enjoy our witty and helpful banter.
Wow, you are in rare form today. So what's going on in your world, Chuck? We haven't really touched base this week, so what's going on? Tell me a little bit what's going on.
Yeah, well, I have been working with a new client again. Their HR manager has resigned, and so they are in between HR folks. So I'm going in. It's always good to go in and do this fractional, helpful HR stuff. I jump in, and right now they're in the middle of setting up their benefits re-enrollment. So I get energized again in learning about benefits and refreshing my mind about ACA regulations and all that great stuff. And then it just so happens this organization is in Florida. And wouldn't you know it, the old HR manager did not set them up to be ready for July 1st here in Florida. Yes. E-Verify is mandatory for this company. And so I've got to work at getting their E-Verify set up. And then I'm hiring for an HR manager in Tampa. So hit me up if you think you might be interested, and I can tell you more.
Yeah, that's great. And as I remember, I just wanted to confirm this. I know I should know. E-Verify in Florida is after 25 employees, right? If you have more than 25 or more, is that correct?
I believe so. Yes.
So just to be aware of that, right? And so that's E-Verify in Florida. There's also, let me see if I can do all the states. Utah, Arizona, I think. And then it's the Tennessee, South Carolina, North Carolina, Georgia, Alabama, and Mississippi all require states to do E-Verify as well. Right. And so the federal, if you're a federal contractor, E-Verify is important. So we probably could have a whole, in fact, this week I did for Paycor, I did I-9 and E-Verify compliance webinar. So if you're a Paycor, if you want to kind of listen to that webinar, go to Paycor. I'm sure it's there. There's going to be another one in July. Maybe you want to drop into that one as well. But it was a great class, Chuck. It was a great webinar. We had a great opportunity. There were so many. We ran out of time, but there were so many great questions. People are asking about the I-9, E-Verify. So really making sure that your company is doing it, listeners. I think it's so incredible, right? And making sure that you're doing that because it's so important.
Yeah, folks, what you may or may not, if it's your first time here, John and I are HR and management consultants. John and I do a lot of seminars. We work for several seminar companies. We also are hired out to craft classes for companies, customized classes. And John was hired by Paycor, which is that HRIS provider, to teach an I-9 seminar. And you're going to see the benefits of that as we eventually talk about I-9s. We'll be offering that type of curriculum in our upcoming class offerings, I guess you should say. And also, we do I-9 audits. And John was a great expert. He had almost 1,000 people on that webinar through Paycor. It was just fantastic to watch, John. You did an amazing job.
Oh, thanks, Chuck. Yeah, right. And so making sure you do that, making sure you do it. In fact, I think it was 2 episodes ago, maybe 3 episodes, we told the story of Hartman Studios, where they had gotten large fines because they didn't do the I-9 process right. And so you may want to go back and listen to that. I don't want to take up too much time today. But that, when we're talking about what's been going on, that's what's going on in my life. I've been working on that. So that was great. Had that opportunity to do.
Yeah. So there's so much HR in the news, John, and our story today revolves around a slew of press releases that the EEOC released regarding sexual harassment, sexual discrimination. And so our main story is going to surround that. But folks, I wanted to talk about, I thought this was kind of an interesting situation. This was just released earlier this month here in June, which is, I know a lot of times, John, companies are having trouble finding talent. And so they're going out to the talent marketplace, and they are upping their pay rates. Right? It makes sense. Right. Where maybe last year we might have hired someone at 65, but now we realize those folks and where we want them are looking for 70, 75, maybe 80 or more. So you have to keep in mind, not only if you are raising your pay rates to bring in new people, which a lot of times tends to be maybe younger people, doesn't necessarily mean they are, but at times you may be bringing in younger people at a higher pay rate, and you're neglecting your current employees. And so I saw this press release from the EEOC earlier in June, and this is a school district called Verona Area School District. Now, we have a Verona in Pittsburgh, PA. This is not the one. This is Verona in Madison, Wisconsin. They had to pay $450,000, raise salaries, and furnish other relief to settle a pay discrimination lawsuit. And the EEOC basically said that they violated civil rights by paying 9 female special education teachers and 1 female school psychologist lower wages than more recently hired male employees doing the same work. Yeah. And when you compare it, they were paying anywhere from $3,000, get this, John, to $17,000 more in pay disparities. And
that's interesting, right? Because my guess is that the school was trying to attract new people, and so they raised their the starting salary up to a higher level. They weren't thinking about discrimination, gender discrimination, right? They weren't thinking about violating the Equal Pay Act. However, they did, because in that case, there was female workers would be making less than the male workers. I thought you were going to go for the Age Discrimination Employment Act, because you were saying young, and you had set me up. I'm like, oh my God, the young people. And now you have people that are over 40 and they're getting paid less, and that could be age discrimination employment there. And so I guess any of the protected classes, if there's a variance from against those protected classes, then you could same kind of a lawsuit could happen.
Yes, and I'm sorry, but that's an example of what could happen. But it's also Equal Pay Act too. So happened that they were hiring more male teachers, and look, these teachers, these current teachers, did ask. They repeatedly said, "Can you increase us? Can you increase us?" And they did not. And this is just an example whether they were doing it on purpose, where they're like, "Oh, we don't have the budget." Maybe they didn't have great advice. They certainly, John, were not listening to the HR Stories podcast, where there's a lesson in every story, or they would have known that there are so many factors you need to consider when it comes to these types of things. So that's my...
I love that story. And again, it's just that simple... What's going to be the impact on the whole organization when we make that decision, right? And I get it. I think it's fine. Like you're like, okay, I'm going to bring somebody new. Their starting salary is going to be a little bit higher than somebody's already here. That's probably fine on the face. But when you have a group of individuals where they are protected class and you're paying another group more money, that's where you're going to run into those troubles. And so, again, I always think, though, I mean, let's put the law aside, right? Because I love putting the law aside. I think it becomes really important that we just think across in terms of morale, what's the best thing for the employees. And this happens a lot of time in corporations where their company's really big and they'll hire new people in, or they'll promote somebody and then they end up making more money versus somebody else. And then there's always this tension, like, well, I know. And if you believe that your employees don't know how much each other are making, you're fooling yourself, right? Because everyone knows at least somewhat where that person is, and they do find that out and they get frustrated, and that becomes a major issue. Even though maybe legally it's okay, you have to think about the morale of your organization as well.
Absolutely. Absolutely. What have you seen in the news lately, John?
Well, I heard this story. You might not know. You're in Florida, and I know the weather is always wonderful down in Florida. It's just all beautiful.
Never hot.
Yeah, never hot.
Raining, never humid.
And so in Texas, they're having a major heat wave, right? And so it's like 110, 112. It's just ridiculously hot down in Texas and other places of the country. And in the news, there was a story of the United States postal worker that died when on the job due to heat stroke. Mm-hmm. And so I just thought, I think it's a good reminder for all of us employers that have people outside and they're going to be working in the heat, or they're going to be working in the cold in the winter, right? This could be that kind of thing, that we're making sure that we are taking care of our employees and monitoring their health and making sure that they have access to water. They have time to take breaks. They can go into the shade. And so the United States Postal Service down in Florida is now allowing, Texas is allowing their workers to start earlier. So they're out of the heat in the end of the day. But they're working them hard, right? And so you're out there, you're walking from, this person was walking from house to house, you're out in the hot heat. We really need to pay attention to that. There's a lot of guidance on the DOL website, Department of Labor website, to look at in terms like what should you be doing to protect your workers. I remember when I was working at QVC, we would do outside hits, right? We would do live hits from outside. And if those workers were going to be out there for a long period of time, like the whole show, our show, we always made sure that there was tons of water bottles out there or access to water. We would also have those frozen water pops. I don't know what they're called. Right? We would have those that would have that sugar and get some of that in there as well. We would do as much possible as shade as we could. And we would not allow anybody to be out there more than a couple hours. And so if we needed to rotate people out, we would rotate people out. And just doing those small things really helped kind of keep the morale up. Some people like the heat, some people don't. But again, making sure that you're paying attention to that becomes important for sure.
Yeah, it all boils down to also the general duty clause, right? So that's right. Where it comes federal. You have a responsibility as an employer to make sure there's no injury or potential death finding hazards. So good reminder, especially as we are in the middle of summer.
Yeah, right. It's summer.
And we have outdoor employees.
Yeah, that's great. What else got going on, Chuck?
Well, there's one more thing, and then we'll take our break and get into our main story today. But we've talked about AI, and this is a article that just came across my desk today, my newswire. It's from Ogletree Deakins, I guess, law firm based out of Atlanta, Georgia. A lawyer there named Jesse Dill wrote this up, and I realized it was about AI, and it was talking about chatbots in the workplace and using that chat GBT for not just HR, but in general for all departments. And we've talked about, should there be policies? Should there not be policies? And this person, Jesse from Ogletree Deakins, wrote a quick hit article that I thought was great and said, look, you really need to look at 3 potential items and put a policy together, implementing regarding the appropriateness and the limitations of something it's now called generative AI. And one thing that's interesting is that there are employers, in fact, I got to tell you, in April 2023, resumebuilder.com did a survey of business leaders and found, get this, 91% of the respondents were seeking or had sought out someone that had chat GBT experience.
Wow, interesting.
I still think that's going to be a job title, chat GBT prompt engineer or something along those lines.
Yeah. Nice. I like it.
Yeah. So if my audience wants to just indulge me for a minute, here's 3 very brief areas, and if I can figure out a way to share this with Ogletree Deakins' permission, I will. But the first consideration for policy is, and you and I have talked about this many times, John, on the podcast and offline, the accuracy of AI-generated information, saying that if you're going to have a policy, you need to take precaution that the AI-generated info is correct. In other words, not hallucinations, as they call it in the business. And you tell your folks you cannot copy and paste exactly what AI said without verifying it through a human review. So that was policy point number 1.
Yeah. And not to take in, not to do it just like, oh, well, they said it, I read it, it sounded right, and not to do any follow-up and research. Because AI, it sounds very official when it comes out, until you start digging into it. And that's where, especially with the HR space, man, have an employment lawyer looking at it or an HR consultant to be like, whoa, before you put that out, let's go look at it. So yeah. Good point.
So that was number 1. The other one is the exposure of confidential and trade secret information. Now, I have people, friends of mine, business colleagues, that are like, yeah, we fed all of our marketing data in, and we said, could you summarize it? Could you do this? Could you do that? Well, guess what, folks? Where's that data going? Like, AI is, and I'll talk about this in our next third point, is a crowdsourced generated depository of information, or repository. And so you're sending all of this info, it's putting it into the giant collective in the sky, and your proprietary info may not be proprietary anymore. So you need to think through that and have a policy about putting in those numbers, those trade secrets, and that disclosure of that proprietary information, because it's now out there. It's not proprietary and it's not confidential anymore.
Yeah, that makes really sense. And I think one of the things as AI goes forward, and there's definitely lots of challenges with it. I was watching a news story where they had the reporter and they took the reporter's picture and they animated his picture, right? And so they made it do all these crazy things. I think in time, we will be able to have our own AI where we can fill it with information, and then it could answer like frequently asked questions, and that kind of stuff may be really beneficial for companies down the road, where the only information it's getting is from your company to kind of do that. So
yeah, and I think there are ways that ChatGPT folks, OpenAI, is looking to sell that as hey, you can carve out a piece of our AI and just use it for what you need, feed in your information, and it could be for customer service situations regarding maybe a widget you're selling or things like that. And we have a good friend, Ojinga, who is working right now on figuring how to do that for HR. So I found it all fascinating.
That's good.
The third thing, if I could share this, and then we'll get going on our break, and you and I have talked about this, is that infringement of third-party intellectual property rights. In other words, AI is generative, and the term is now called generative AI, and it is pooling. It's a crowdsourced thing, so it's pooling from all kind of other sources, and it may be pooling third-party intellectual type things. Now, I've asked ChatGPT, is this not copyright? Can I actually use what you're sharing me? ChatGPT says, yes, everything I tell you, it's free, it's open. I'm like, okay, great. But should I listen to the ChatGPT AI? Because maybe what it's sending me is open, but the source where it got it from is not. And so that is, you need to make sure that you have a policy that limits how your workers are using content created by these programs to guard against infringing on others' intellectual rights. So those are 3 policy considerations. I found it fascinating.
Yeah. That's great. And we did do a story on AI. It was a couple episodes ago. So if you want to go back and look at it, the title's AI. You can see it right there. Just search on Buzzsprout or Apple or wherever you get your podcast from. You'll be able to find it. And so it's a good episode, kind of reflect back on. But I love that she presented that in such a clear, concise way, and then you found it powerful for you. So yeah, let's share that article if we can. I don't know if you can. Let's try to do that, Sam. If we can share that article, that would be great. We appreciate it. All right, so let's take a break. You have been listening to the HR Stories podcast, where there is a lesson in every story. After the break, we will come back, and Chuck is going to take a deep dive into what the EEOC is doing around sexual harassment investigations in the workplace.
Hey everybody, it's Chuck with the team at HR Stories. The HR Stories podcast provides weekly lessons along with compelling HR news in a storytelling format, but we have found our listeners want more. You know, we know it's easy to be overwhelmed managing the day-to-day responsibilities of HR. We know HR can be isolating, and our listeners want a supportive community to turn to for advice and inspiration. And we've been there. We know what it's like. And that's why John and I at the team at HR Stories have created a membership program that goes beyond the HR Stories podcast. Imagine an education support group for new and experienced HR professionals alike, with twice monthly sessions and an opportunity to collaborate and network with your peers. Whether you are an HR team of one or you have HR as a responsibility, our membership program is designed to offer benefits that will elevate your knowledge and advance your career. Simply go to team@hrstories.com and click on the membership link in the top menu bar to learn more, or check out the link in the show notes below.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to HR Stories podcast. John and Chuck, we've been talking about sexual harassment in the news. Chuck is going to tell us some stories, I think. So Chuck, let's get into this. What's going on?
Yeah, so John, on top of the HR in the news we shared with the audience, the EEOC just released a slew of updates over the past week or two of things they've been working on. And it looks like the big focus, surprise, and I really thought with all the culture wars in the news and other things that I didn't know what to expect, but it's all about sex, sexual harassment, sexual discrimination in the workplace. They've closed a couple cases out and they're taking a couple of cases forward, and they are ringing the bell saying, guess what we're doing?
Yeah, I find that fascinating. I mean, I don't really find it surprising when you talk to people in the workplace.
Yeah.
It is a major concern, right? It's a major concern in the workplace. And so I'm glad they're addressing it. No matter how much they address it, I still think it'll be a concern in the workplace. And that's where us HR professionals have to really work on culture. But I'm fascinated about the particular stories that you picked out, Chuck, and kind of how they all relate together. And what can we do as employers, HR professionals, managers, to kind of stem that side? What should we be doing to protect our organization and our employees?
Yeah, and I think as I get into these, what struck me overall is the extreme nature of all of these examples. It's not just simply, oh, so-and-so was looking at me, so-and-so was looking at my private parts, so-and-so did, oh, they made me feel a little uncomfortable. These are like extreme stories that anyone would be like, what? So let me give you
Yeah, and I think what always surprises me is like, wait, this is 2023.
Yeah.
Don't these people know better?
Yeah. So here's a couple of the recent EO press release stories. Pilot Plastics. They operate a manufacturing company in Ohio. They had to pay $52,000. And I know that doesn't sound like much, but to me, I was like, wow, only $52,000. But in monetary relief to a former employee to resolve sex discrimination retaliation charge. In that case, the EEOC found reasonable cause to believe that Pilot Plastics discriminated against an employee because of his sex, subjecting him to sexual harassment and retaliating against him when he complained by demoting, disciplining, and then, here's the term, constructively discharging him.
Right, which was an episode we did back in April. It was titled Constructive Discharge, Constructing a Potential Lawsuit for Your Company. And so just as a reminder for everyone, our listeners, constructive discharge is when a worker's resignation or retirement may be found not to be voluntary because the employer had created a hostile or intolerable work environment or has applied other forms of pressure or coercion which forces the employee to quit or resign. So basically, the employee didn't want to resign, but that was the only choice left to them because it was such a terrible, hostile work environment, right? And so again, looking at that becomes so important. Make sure that we're doing that.
Yeah, and in this case, the harassment included inappropriate comments, touching by company officials, despite complaints to other management. Sexual harassment, retaliation continued. So he gets $52,000 out of this. Point being here, though, is that when it comes to sexual harassment, it's not always, and a lot of our stories circle on male to female, although our story that is our main story today. But I just want to bring this up that it can be other sexes. Sometimes same-sex sexual harassment is also, well, sometimes same-sex is always sexual harassment. It's just plain sexual harassment.
Right, yeah. And so again, it goes into gender. And so male to female, male to male, female to female, male to female, female to male. Any of those are there, and I think you need to be paying attention. It's such an important topic. And not to think, I think one of the things, and we've seen this in many of our stories that we tell, Chuck, managers or HR professionals will say, well, they're only joking, they're only kidding. And I think that's an issue. I just think you got to be careful. You should address it. There should be a no just no policy. There should be a policy that says you can't do it, right? No tolerance policy. And so making sure that we do that.
And then there's just one other quick mini story from a company called USF Holland. This came out. They had to pay $490,000 and get this, provide $120,000 in scholarships to settle an EEOC sex discrimination lawsuit where they failed to hire women truck drivers at their Olive Branch, Mississippi location. And primarily this company failed to hire female drivers, except they did hire one female driver, John, at one point. They hired and fired her before she could complete her first route. So there we go. They're like, yeah, we hired someone. Okay. But then they fired her right away. I don't know. So the EEOC went in, they investigated it. They found a significant number of women with extensive experience had applied over the years. And the reason they applied was because apparently this company, for all these other faults, had an impressive, amazing benefits package. And so people wanted to work there, especially in Olive Branch, Mississippi, right? So they were the employer of choice. We got to work there. Anyways, they didn't hire any of the women. The one thing that I find interesting about this case is that they not only have to pay a fine, there's this 3-year consent decree with a bunch of stuff on there. They really layered it on, but there's this $120,000 scholarship fund that they're going to have to award 4 times annually for the next 3 years to female applicants who want to obtain their truck driver certifications through an apprentice program.
Well, it's kind of interesting, right? Because, of course, yeah, $120,000 to the company is a lot, but I know in that truck driving industry, right, in the Department of Transportation, that industry, it is really hard to find qualified truck drivers.
Yeah.
To do the job. And so really it's helping the company by opening up their minds to go, all right, we're going to give these individuals not only a scholarship, but they're going to be part of our apprenticeship program. And so now after they're done that, now they have an opportunity to hire these individuals and to help them have successful careers at this particular company. And it's interesting, right? Because the story just talks about the one branch, right? And so Holland is a bigger company than that. So it always goes to me, and I know we don't have all that information, but it always goes to me is who was running that branch and what limitations had he put on in the hiring process so that female applicants were not being hired, right? And
Good point.
That's where, like, again, a lot of times we'll have these national companies and they're like, no, we're really good at this, blah, 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 blah. But there's that one branch, that one store, that one plant that has all these things, and we have to look at the leadership. We have to make sure that our leadership is trained to understand the EEOC, discrimination in the workplace, and all the various laws that go into there. So very interesting. I want to know a little bit more about what they get in that scholarship.
Oh, sure. So it's, I got to tell you, you're right. Someone at the company might have been thinking, I wonder if this is a big end around saying, hey, I got this idea. Let's do a scholarship. We'll tell the EEOC, we'll do it. We'll push for more female drivers. And it includes tuition, a DOT physical. They're going to pay them $17.50 an hour to go through these apprentice class. They're going to pay for commuting, transportation costs, for people to get there, any lodging, state exams, all this great stuff. So you're right. It actually benefits the company. In a way, it looks like a penalty to someone that's not looking at it deeply, but deep down, it is helping the company. I just found it fascinating. And there were a few other recent EEOC cases. But the point I want to share with our listeners is that the EEOC, Equal Employment Opportunity Commission, and their investigators seem to be focusing on a particular area of discrimination, at least recently.
Yeah, right. And as I was saying, right, paying attention to making sure that our managers are trained, making sure that our managers, our HR professionals, our supervisors, our executives are trained to understand what sexual harassment is, right? And I think we all have this vision of, oh, that's the person in the office where there's a male and he's leering at a woman and that's sexual harassment, right? But sexual harassment is so more in depth and understanding. If we're not hiring people, if we're discriminating based on their gender or sex, all of that stuff in there. And I know one of the things that you and I have been really working on and really working with a lot of our clients, and we're looking for more clients in this area, is one, sexual harassment training for your managers, right? Chuck and I love going into organizations, 90-minute courses, right? They're not long courses, but we can go through your whole employee population pretty quick. Typically, we like 15 to 25 people in the classes so we can have conversations, make sure that we're addressing any concerns they have, and then we can kind of bring all of that back. So really make sure that you're reaching out to us, because we want to help you not have these issues on there.
Yeah, I seem to be teaching a lot of sexual harassment classes, but looking at this, obviously not enough. And folks, we could do it in person. We could do it virtually. We can record and have an on-demand class that's available 24/7. And it's actually pretty reasonable, a lot more reasonable than, well, paying all these fines.
Yeah, absolutely. So, Chuck, what's the big story today?
Yeah, we're going to talk today about Melissa. Melissa, and I try and say her last name. It looks like it's Sotart, I guess. Melissa Soetart or Sotart, but I'm not going to use her last name a lot. We're just going to call her Melissa. And she's an employee at Perro Family Farms in their Benton Harbor, Michigan location.
Okay.
And for a 6-month period from July 2019 to December 2019, a forklift driver, coworker with whom Melissa had a prior romantic relationship. We don't know this person's name. It's not named in the complaint or the lawsuit yet. It's just forklift driver. But he's a man, a male, and she is female. And they had a prior romantic relationship. He regularly uttered sexual remarks to Melissa both on and John off the job, including comments about her breasts, her buttocks, her sexual history, accusations of having sex with other forklift drivers, truck drivers, calling her, I'm just going to say this quote, and this is in a lawsuit, bitch, B-I-T-C-H, and telling her to suck a, well, Samantha, can you put a beep there? But his male genitalia. I don't know if I can say that word here on the HR Stories podcast.
Yeah, and so that's probably better not to. But it happens, right? It happens in the workbook, and I don't want to shy away from it because this is what the real thing happened. So here's my question for you, and you may not be able to answer, and that's fine. It's not important for the story. So were Melissa and this forklift driver, were they interacting outside of work? And like, how did that come into play? Do you know? Did they tell that?
It seems like, no. The lawsuit doesn't go into that, whether they lived near each other, whether he used to call her, maybe he would show up at her house. Okay. They apparently had a previous relationship, but they weren't doing the same job. So she was working in the warehouse doing something, and he was the forklift driver. She relied on him to move product around this warehouse.
Okay.
And and if you look up Perro Family Farms, they're based now in Delray Beach. That's where their headquarters are. But you'll know their logo and you'll see their stuff that you've seen in grocery stores. A lot of green beans and things like that. Good food. But she would say, hey, I need this, I need that. And he would just like start screaming at her, calling all those names. But get this, John, it was beyond just sexual harassment because he would occasionally make violent threats to her, saying he would run over her with a forklift and threatening to get another female coworker to beat her ass.
That's crazy, right? That's just crazy. And like, to me, if that, and I've worked in some tough work environments, if that's happening, somebody needs to address it. So did people know about it, Chuck?
Yeah. So here's the thing. She complained and attempted to work with the supervisor and the HR people to address this forklift driver's harassment that was occurring once again on or off the job. The supervisor promised to talk to the forklift driver and occasionally counseled the driver regarding his behavior, but on at least one occasion during the counseling, and folks, this is why things are always discoverable. I don't know how they know this, but apparently the supervisor told the forklift driver, look, we don't want to lose you.
So let me ask, last thing I ask Chuck. So if I say that, right? And so if I'm saying that in terms of my coaching, and I say, we don't want to lose you, or we don't want you to lose your job, meaning that, look, if you continue your behavior, you're going to lose your job.
Right?
Versus, like, this sounds like we don't want to lose you, so we're not going to fire you, right? And so I think, again, there needs to be very careful wording, because I think if I'm saying to them, look, we don't want you to lose your job, I'm saying, like, your behavior continues, blah, 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 versus we don't want to lose you means, like, well, we're going to do whatever we can to keep you.
Yeah, I know. It's amazing how these lawsuits can take a twist. So you always have to be careful what you put in a document. You have to be careful what you say ahead and before. I mean, this looks like, supervisor put the arm around, oh, dude, we don't want to lose you. You need to calm down. Let me. So anyways, but the counseling failed to stop the harassment. And get this, it provoked the forklift driver to call Melissa a snitch.
Okay.
And a liar. So now we're talking retaliation. At one point, the supervisor then says, well, let me try and stagger schedules so they're not in contact with each other, but it failed too because Melissa worked a lot and she did a lot of overtime, and the forklift driver would then come in early to harass Melissa.
Ugh.
It just continued to go on. Finally, she continued to complain to HR management to no avail. So on December 1st, 5 or 6 months of going into this, the forklift driver intensified his harassment, accusing Melissa in front of a truck driver of sucking beep, starts with the D word, to get her position. And so now it's overheard by other people. Apparently, I don't know if it was overheard before, but later that day, the forklift driver intensifies it and threatens to burn Melissa's house down and kill her and her dog.
I'm shaking my head in the background.
Yeah, so I guess the dog thing and the killing, that's even finally, I guess. She goes to complain to the company. They say, oh, you need a restraining order for us to do anything. This is what the company tells her. So the next day on December 2nd, Melissa obtains this personal protection order from the Berrien County Circuit Court. I mean, didn't take her much time, right? They're like, oh boy, we better issue this right away. She gave it to Perro Family Farms, and it contained a sworn declaration and statements and affirmations that she was being repeatedly harassed at work.
So let's be clear, though, Chuck. As an HR professional, I can stop my employee's behavior without a restraining order. I don't need a restraining order to deal with an employee at work, right? I mean...
Exactly. I don't know why they went there, why they thought they needed that. But on that day, December 2nd, the forklift driver was finally terminated.
Oh, my goodness. So finally, they got rid of him. Oh, by the way, we don't really believe you until we have a court document that says you've done it. Okay, listen to your employees, folks. Listen to your employees.
Yeah. There's so many things that went wrong here, investigations, things like that. But get this. So they terminate the forklift driver, but they deemed him, and I don't know how they found this in the court case, but like I said, everything's discoverable, folks, eligible for rehire.
Well, they probably had a form, right? I mean, typically we have a form for the termination, and it says, is this person eligible for rehire? Well, whoever filled that out didn't think it through and said, yes.
Yes, rehire. Right? Let's have them come back. Cool down for a couple months, then come on back.
Yeah.
So
what was the ultimate outcome of this case?
Okay. So this is actually an active case. It's just filed. EEOC has done their investigation. They tried to go to mediation. Perro Family Farm says no way, which I don't understand why companies do that. They said no way. And it's so egregious that EEOC is pushing forward. They've requested a jury trial because it is extremely egregious and over the top. So we shall see where that goes.
Yeah, I mean, think about it, right? I mean, she's in a protected class. She was harassed by a fellow coworker, and she made repeated attempts to let them know. She went through the procedures of the company, let them know, and then she had to and then had witnesses. I don't know what their defense will be, right? And so maybe their defense is going to be, well, we took action on December 22nd. We got rid of the person as soon as we had that official document. I think they're going to lose.
Yeah. It's a jury trial. Juries like to go with the, the plaintiffs in these cases. So, look, giving that person a yes rehire didn't help their case. Okay. Because they obviously terminated him for some reason. And so at some point they believed her, but then they said, oh, we'll give him a yes rehire. So something tells me that will not play well in court. And the EEOC senior trial attorney, a person named Dale Rice, said it best, John. And this is my final thought on this, is just quoting from Dale. An employer cannot condone a work environment where a female employee is degraded and threatened because of her sex, or, to your point, John, okay, you and Dale from EEOC are on the same level here.
Yeah.
Dale says they cannot wait until a company is presented with a protection order before it decides to act. It must step in and stop such behavior as soon as possible.
Yeah, and I want to go back to that word condone, right? Condone. Right? It's a great word, and it means like you're not doing anything about it, right? You're just sitting on the side going, okay, yeah, stop, right? But you're going back to your work, oh, stop, right? You're not doing anything. You're allowing it to continue in the workplace, and you're not addressing it. Now, look, the manager did make an attempt, right? He made an attempt to go, all right, I'm going to separate the two of you. But obviously that didn't end the situation. I think it's a good step, right? I think in that, if they just did that and then really addressed it there. But I do think as soon as this person comes forward, there should have been a full investigation. I would have loved to send you, Chuck, into that situation, because I would have loved to see you do such a great job with our clients and talking to them about, all right, this is what you need to do. Here's what's going on. Here's how we need to address this. To protect your organization, we need to do this now. You can't wait. And you would have come back. You would have stopped this right up front, right?
We can only hope.
Yeah, right? Well, I think you would have. I mean, you would have told them what to do, whether they did it or not. Is a whole different thing on there as well. Wow, this was a great story. Thank you for sharing these stories with us, Chuck, because I always walk away in a little bit of better place going, oh, yeah, we need to do this. We need to address this. I'm hoping our listeners are walking away with that same information, that same feeling like, oh, gosh. And here's the thing that I'm going to kind of sum this up for our listeners. Here's what I would do. I would make sure that I'm walking around and I'm listening to my employees and I'm doing surveys and I'm making sure that I have, as an HR professional, I have the temperature in every single place I have employees working, to make sure that they're not being quiet and just kind of quiet quitting because their boss is harassing them or doing something terrible. You have to get out there. We can't, I know we get all busy, right? We're all busy doing all these things in our workplace. We have to get out. Part of our job is to kind of relate, build that trust up with our employees so they come to us and say, hey, we're having this issue, and then you can address it, right? And so a lot of times, and this person went, right, Melissa came directly to them, the HR professional, and said, look, I'm having this issue. Need to make sure that I address it. And then the other thing I would go back to everyone is go back and look at your policies and what does your policy say in terms of what is allowed and what's not allowed. What do I do if I'm being harassed? Who do I go to? And make sure it's not just the supervisor. It should also be your HR, you in HR. So sorry, I just wanted to end that on there and well.
Yeah, folks, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to our podcast. Check out our book. It's still new. It's still out there. We're offering a great deal on it this summer. The Ultimate Book. It's a guide to HR checklists so you can get HR right. Check out team@hrstories.com, team@hrstories.com to see what John and I are up to throughout the country, bringing HR and employee management techniques to you to save the world. World. And you've been listening.
All right, Samantha, you got it.
Yeah. And you've been listening to the HR Stories podcast, where there is a lesson in every story.
Thank you for listening to the HR Stories podcast. The material presented in this podcast is for informational purposes only. Chuck and John always recommend using an employment lawyer or HR consultant to handle any legal concerns or HR issues. We do our best to double check sources and make sure the information we are providing is accurate. We may eliminate or embellish without changing the basic narrative to make the story easier to understand. In certain circumstances, we may change identifying information to protect the innocent. The HR Stories broadcast is brought to you by the team at HR Stories. The team at HR Stories is designed to help anyone with HR responsibilities be better at managing the employee experience. To engage with us, go to the hrstoriesteam.com and learn more about how the team at HR Stories can support your business or nonprofit. Thank you for listening to the HR Stories podcast, where there is a lesson in every story.